The morning sky over the mountains of Earth looked normal, but something moved above the clouds. It was not a storm, not birds, not aircraft made by human hands. Dark shapes drifted across the sun, huge metal giants floating with silent power. The first person to see them was a farmer in a valley, standing frozen as shadows swallowed his land. He thought they were only illusions, until the ground shook with fire from above. All across the planet, humans looked up. In the cities, in villages, in deserts and seas, people stared at ships the size of skyscrapers. Some thought they were meteors, others prayed they were angels. But when fire fell from the sky, burning buildings and forests, no one had any doubt. The war had come. It was not between nations of men, but between Earth and something greater, something from the stars. In the first hours, chaos spread like wildfire. Governments called for calm, but the voice of panic was louder. Soldiers rushed to defend the ground, tanks rolled to block the highways, and jets scrambled into the air. Yet the alien ships did not fight like humans. They moved with precision, their weapons silent and deadly. Entire divisions of soldiers vanished in seconds. Great cities went dark as power grids burned. Humanity had always fought each other, but nothing had prepared them for this. The invaders were not loud conquerors. They did not shout demands. They did not warn or negotiate. They came like storms of steel, moving with cold purpose. From space they had studied Earth, and they believed humans were primitive, still breaking sticks against rocks compared to their great machines. To them, this war was not a challenge, but a harvest. They had taken worlds before, and they expected Earth to fall like the rest. But humanity was not only about weapons. Humanity was about survival. In the chaos of burning cities and falling nations, small stories unfolded, stories the aliens could not see. A young soldier pulling his wounded friend into cover, even as fire rained down. A mother hiding her children under the floorboards, while drones swept overhead. Scientists in hidden labs switching on old machines, desperate to find answers. The invaders thought they were facing primitives. But what they faced was something they did not yet understand: human will. The first true resistance came not from armies, but from scattered fighters who refused to run. In the forests, groups of survivors gathered, using terrain as their shield. In the ruins of cities, snipers picked off alien scouts. In oceans, submarines that had once hunted rival nations now hunted alien machines. Humanity had been fractured by borders and politics for centuries, but now the war gave them one enemy. The world that had been divided was slowly uniting under fire. On the ground, alien machines began to march. They were tall, armored walkers, glowing with strange energy. They burned forests, smashed houses, and hunted survivors. But in one valley, they found something different. Human soldiers had dug trenches, set traps, and prepared to fight. Their weapons were simple bullets, rockets, mines. Compared to alien shields, these seemed like toys. But when the first alien walker fell to a trap of fire and steel, the soldiers cheered. It was not much, but it was hope. Hope was the one weapon humans had that aliens could not measure. The invaders could count guns, armies, ships, but they could not count spirit. Every time a village burned, survivors formed bands. Every time a city fell, refugees carried stories of defiance. The war was only beginning, but already the stars had made one mistake. They had underestimated Earth. By nightfall, the sky was filled with smoke and fire. Satellites had been destroyed, communication was broken, and the world seemed blind. But in the darkness, humans lit fires of their own. Signals flashed between hidden camps. Radios whispered from underground bunkers. Across continents, people who had once been strangers were now allies. Humanity, primitive as the galaxy had called them, was rising, and in the command room of the largest alien ship above Earth, the invaders watched in silence. They saw the flames, the resistance, the refusal to surrender. For the first time, a commander of the Galactic fleet frowned. Primitive or not, humans were not falling as expected. Something about them was different. Something dangerous. Something that might change the galaxy itself. Asterisk, the world was burning, yet the fight was not over. By the second day, the alien fleet believed Earth had been broken. Their ships hovered like dark mountains in the sky, unmoving and silent, watching the planet smolder. But while they thought humans were finished, Earth was only beginning to answer. In the ruins of shattered cities, survivors gathered in underground tunnels, in subway stations, in old bunkers built for wars between nations. Soldiers mixed with farmers, engineers with students. The fear was heavy, but so was anger. People asked the same question again and again: why us? Why had the stars come here, to this planet, to take from those who had barely begun to reach the edge of space? The answer was never given, but it did not matter. The invaders had come, and humanity had no choice but to fight. The first true counterattack happened in the mountains. A squadron of human fighter jets, thought destroyed, had hidden in a valley airstrip. Their pilots knew their weapons were nothing compared to the shields of alien ships, but they refused to wait for death. With only a handful of missiles, they took to the sky. When the alien scouts detected them, beams of energy lit the clouds, trying to cut them down. Yet the jets flew low, weaving through canyons, using terrain like armor. At the cost of their own lives, the pilots slammed their missiles into the engines of one alien ship. The explosion was small by galactic standards. To the aliens, it was nothing. But to humanity, it was a roar of defiance. Cameras hidden in helmets, still streaming to battered satellites, captured the fall of the ship as it crashed into the forest. For the first time, the world saw proof. The enemy could bleed. The message spread like wildfire. Across broken radios, across whispers in refugee camps, hope grew. The invaders were not invincible. The aliens responded with fury. Entire regions were leveled in retaliation. Cities that had not yet fallen were burned to ash. Villages were crushed under mechanical feet. To the fleet, it was only punishment, a reminder of who ruled the skies. But this mistake only hardened humanity's will. Every fallen city became a rallying cry. Every destroyed town became a reason to fight harder. In Europe, resistance fighters sabotaged supply routes the aliens had built for their machines. In Asia, engineers reprogrammed old satellites to track alien movements. In Africa, villages hid wounded soldiers and passed food through underground tunnels. In the Americas, forests became battlegrounds, where humans set fire to ambush the invaders. For the first time in history, humanity acted as one. What the aliens failed to see was the way humans adapted. For generations, humans had survived floods, storms, earthquakes, and wars of their own making. They had learned to improvise, to turn weakness into strength. Alien machines were advanced, but they left wreckage. And humans studied that wreckage like hungry wolves. In a hidden lab beneath the ruins of a city, scientists gathered pieces of fallen drones. Their energy cores, still glowing faintly, were pulled apart with shaking hands. The technology was beyond anything Earth had seen, but slowly, piece by piece, humans began to understand. If they could not match the aliens in strength, they would learn to fight with speed and creativity. On the battlefield, this was already happening. Soldiers had begun to use homemade traps, explosives buried in the ground, magnets attached to alien walkers, even ropes strung between trees to trip their smaller machines. Simple, crude, but effective. And every time an alien machine fell to such tricks, the soldiers laughed, because it proved one truth: brains could fight steel. In the skies above, the alien commander grew restless. Reports came in from every continent. Resistance cells too small to crush all at once. Sabotage that slowed their machines. Unexpected losses in places they thought secure. To the fleet, Earth was supposed to be conquered in days. Yet days were turning into weeks, and the humans still fought. On the ground, a story began to spread. No one knew if it was true, but everyone whispered it. A unit of human soldiers had destroyed an alien warship, not with missiles, but by boarding it. Armed with rifles and knives, they had climbed inside the belly of the beast and torn it apart from within. Whether it was real or not, it did not matter. It gave people courage. By the end of the second week, the first strike had become a legend. Humanity was still bleeding, still losing cities, still running in many places, but they were also standing. Against the greatest fleet the galaxy had sent, against weapons that had crushed 100 worlds, Earth was refusing to bow. And high in orbit, for the first time, alien commanders began to fear. Not because humans were stronger than them, but because humans were something worse, unpredictable. Primitive, yes, but primitive like fire, burning out of control. The war had dragged on longer than anyone expected. The alien fleet thought Earth would collapse in days, but weeks had passed, and the humans still fought. Entire nations were wounded, cities were broken, but the will of the people burned brighter than the fires in the streets. For the first time, the galaxy's conquerors began to wonder if they had made a mistake. On Earth, the hidden strength of humanity was beginning to rise. It did not come from mighty weapons or powerful machines. It came from people. Ordinary men and women who had lived simple lives now stood in the ruins, refusing to bend. In the mountains, a group of miners turned their tunnels into fortresses. They used explosives meant for rocks to destroy alien walkers. In the countryside, farmers tore apart their tractors to build armored vehicles. In the cities, hackers hijacked alien signals, spreading false orders that confused the invaders' drones. Humanity was not waiting for rescue. They were becoming their own weapon. One of the first great victories came in the desert. A small human strike team had tracked the movements of an alien supply convoy. These convoys carried energy cells, strange glowing containers that powered the alien machines. The humans had nothing more than rifles, a few stolen explosives, and the desert itself. They buried charges beneath the sand and waited. When the machines rolled over the hidden path, the desert erupted in fire. The aliens were caught in confusion, their convoy torn apart, their energy cells scattered. By nightfall, the resistance had captured more alien technology than they had ever dreamed possible. Those stolen energy cells became legends. Scientists risked everything to study them, building new weapons from scraps and stolen power. The first railguns, crude but deadly, were made in underground workshops. They were not perfect, but when fired, they punched through alien armor. For the first time, human weapons did more than scratch the invaders. They killed, but it was not only weapons. Humanity's greatest strength was its mind. The aliens were powerful, but predictable. They had conquered so many worlds the same way that they no longer imagined surprise. Humans, however, thrived in surprise. In the jungles, guerrilla fighters learned to strike fast and vanish. In the icy tundra, soldiers lured alien machines onto frozen lakes, where they sank into the depths. In the ruins of cities, traps turned streets into mazes of death. Everywhere the aliens looked, humans were adapting. The commanders of the fleet grew frustrated. They had never lost so much time on a single planet. They began sending stronger forces, entire divisions of their war machines, to crush resistance. Villages were burned, forests cleared, rivers poisoned. But with every strike, they created more enemies. For every family destroyed, 5 more humans picked up weapons. For every city burned, 10 more camps rose in the wild. And then came the story that reached across the planet like fire in dry grass. A small resistance group, hidden in the ruins of an old port city, managed to shoot down a massive alien gunship. They did not use advanced weapons. They used cables, magnets, and old cranes. When the gunship came low, hunting for them, they threw everything they had into the sky. The machine tangled, spun out of control, and crashed into the sea. The explosion lit the night, and the people cheered so loudly it was said the sound carried for miles. The galaxy might have seen humans as primitive, but in that moment, the world saw itself as unbreakable. Broadcasts spread, telling the story again and again. Children in refugee camps whispered about it before they slept. Soldiers fighting in the mud smiled through their pain, repeating the tale. Hope was no longer a flicker, it was a flame dot in orbit. Alien commanders studied the data. Losses were growing. Resistance was spreading. The humans were using their own machines against them, adapting in ways that no other species had. Primitive technology was turning into clever traps, simple weapons into deadly tools. For the first time, the fleet's leaders spoke the word they had never used for Earth before: danger. But the humans were not done. Deep underground, in old bunkers from wars long past, a plan was forming. Leaders of nations that had once fought each other now gathered in secret meetings. Scientists worked day and night beside soldiers and engineers. The world was preparing something larger, something the aliens would not expect. Humanity's hidden strength was no longer scattered, it was coming together. Above the planet, the alien fleet glowed in the night sky, confident in their numbers. But below, in the ashes of burned cities and the silence of dark forests, a truth was spreading. The war was not only for survival, it was for victory. And the humans, called primitive by the stars, were ready to show the galaxy that Earth would never kneel. Asterisk, the flames of resistance had spread across the planet, but fire always drew storms. The aliens had grown tired of small losses, tired of humans refusing to kneel. If Earth would not surrender, then Earth would burn. On the third month of the invasion, the alien fleet unleashed its full power. Where before they had tested humanity with scouts and patrols, now entire warships descended. The sky turned black with their shadows. Their weapons rained fire that shattered mountains, boiled rivers, and melted steel towers like wax. Humanity's defiance was strong, but their cities were not built to withstand such fury. New York, once a city of light, fell in a single night. The skyline that had stood for centuries was turned into rubble and smoke. Millions fled, but not all escaped. Soldiers tried to hold the bridges, but alien beams cut through them as if they were paper. The city burned, and the fleet moved on. In Asia, the ancient city of Beijing fought for 3 days. Citizens, students, and old veterans stood beside soldiers in the streets, throwing everything they had against the invaders. Rockets, firebombs, even stones were hurled at the enemy. But the aliens came with walkers and machines that towered like monsters. By the 4th day, the city was ash. Survivors were scattered into the countryside, carrying nothing but grief and rage. London, Moscow, Cairo, Rio, city after city fell. The aliens did not want prisoners. They wanted silence. The Earth's greatest landmarks, built through generations, became ruins under alien fire. The world mourned, but mourning soon became something harder, something sharper. The fall of cities became scars carved into the hearts of survivors, and scars do not vanish. They become reminders. The darkest blow came when the aliens targeted the very symbols of human unity. Communication hubs, power plants, ports, and research centers were deliberately destroyed. The internet, once the web that connected the world, was torn apart piece by piece. Governments struggled to command when messages could not travel. The world seemed blind and deaf, unable to speak to itself. The fleet thought this would end the resistance. Instead, it forced humanity to learn new ways to survive. In the ashes of a destroyed capital, survivors built signal fires on rooftops, using old codes of light to warn villages of incoming machines. In forests, messengers carried notes by hand, crossing dangerous lands to link camps together. In mountains, radios were repaired with scraps, their weak signals bouncing from peak to peak. The cities had fallen, but human voices had not. Amid the destruction, heroes rose. In the ruins of Paris, A band of children guided refugees through old tunnels to safety. In Africa, tribes that had once been rivals joined forces, their hunters using ancient skills to track alien scouts. In South America, guerrilla fighters turned jungles into death traps, striking and vanishing like ghosts. The fall of cities broke walls between people. Where once they had been divided by language, politics, or faith, now they were simply human, but the cost was unbearable. Families were torn apart. Millions were gone. Entire nations were shadows of what they once were. The grief was heavy enough to crush spirits, and for a time, despair spread faster than hope. There were whispers that maybe humanity could not win, that maybe the stars had been right to call them primitive. Yet even in this darkest time, sparks of defiance remained. One spark came from the Arctic Circle, where a hidden submarine base had survived undetected. When the fleet moved south to strike more cities, those submarines rose from beneath the ice and launched their torpedoes at a passing alien warship. Against all odds, one torpedo pierced the ship's shield and tore it apart from below. The wreckage fell into the frozen sea, and once again the message spread. The enemy was not untouchable. The alien commanders grew colder. They saw humanity not as weak prey anymore, but as a disease that spread no matter how often it was cut down. Their answer was brutal: scorched earth. They began burning forests, draining lakes, and poisoning soil. They wanted to leave nothing behind that humans could use. It was a war not just against people, but against the planet itself. And yet, Earth had always endured. Through ice ages, storms, plagues, and endless wars, humanity had survived. The fall of cities was terrible, but it was not the end. In the ashes, survivors whispered to each other, promising that the galaxy would pay for every stone broken, every life taken by the end of that month. Most of the great capitals of the world were gone. The maps humans once knew were meaningless. But in the forests, deserts, mountains, and oceans, humanity remained. Primitive, yes, but primitive like roots buried deep, impossible to burn away. And so in the silence after the destruction, one truth became clear: the fall of cities was not the death of Earth. It was the beginning of something the aliens had never seen before. An entire species united not by choice, but by survival. The fall of cities had left the world scarred. Smoke rose from ruins across the continents, and millions were gone. To the alien fleet, Earth should have been broken, its spirit crushed. But instead, the opposite was happening. The more they destroyed, the more stubborn humanity became. And in the ashes, something new was being born. It began with the wreckage. Wherever alien machines fell, humans swarmed to take what they could. Pieces of armor, fragments of weapons, glowing cores pulled from broken drones, all of it was gathered in secret. Engineers, scientists, and even simple mechanics worked by candlelight in hidden bunkers. They did not need to understand everything at once. They only needed to find what could be useful. In the mountains of Eastern Europe, a team of young scientists cracked the first secret. They discovered how to overload captured alien power cells. When triggered, they exploded with the force of bombs larger than anything Earth had built. The cells became weapons of desperation, carried by resistance fighters willing to give their lives if it meant taking the enemy with them. Soon, alien patrols began to fear every ruined street, every abandoned car, every pile of rubble. Anything could be a trap, but the true turning point came in South America. Deep in the jungle, a resistance group managed to take down an alien scout ship without destroying it completely. For the first time, humans had a machine still mostly intact. They dragged it into the cover of the jungle, hiding it with branches and mud. For weeks, mechanics and engineers studied the craft, sleeping beside it, arguing over every wire and circuit. Slowly, painfully, they learned to make it fly. It was clumsy, broken, barely functional, but it lifted from the ground under human control. When the news spread, it was like lightning across the planet. If humans could steal one ship, they could steal more. If they could fly one, they could fight with it. The galaxy had never imagined that primitives could do such a thing. But humanity had always been a species of thieves, builders, and dreamers. They did not invent fire, they stole it. They did not invent steel, they forged it from what they found in the earth. And now, they were stealing the stars. The resistance began to grow bolder. Raids on alien convoys were no longer just about survival, but about capturing parts. Each victory gave more material to work with. In deserts, workshops lit up with sparks as mechanics turned scraps into railguns. In bunkers, programmers hacked alien drones, forcing them to turn on their masters. In forests, hunters mounted stolen energy weapons onto trucks and jeeps. Humanity was no longer fighting only with rifles and bombs. They were building weapons the aliens had never expected to see turned against them. The invaders answered with more destruction. They rained fire on jungles, bombed mountains, and scoured seas. But it was too late. The seed of rebellion had already spread. Humanity had reached the turning point where fear no longer ruled them. Every loss only gave them another reason to fight harder. One night in the ruins of Berlin, this new strength was tested. An alien walker battalion moved into the city, clearing streets with their glowing cannons. But the resistance had prepared. Hidden railguns fired from the shadows, piercing armor. Explosive traps lit up the streets, collapsing buildings onto the machines. And then, from above, the stolen scout ship swooped down, its stolen weapons blazing. For the first time, an alien force retreated, not because they were ordered, but because they were losing. The news spread faster than fire. The fall of cities had been a wound, but Berlin became a symbol. Humanity could not only resist, they could win battles. Primitive, the galaxy had called them. But now those primitives were learning to fight with the very weapons meant to destroy them. In orbit, the alien commanders argued. Some demanded total annihilation of Earth with orbital fire. Others warned that destroying the planet would waste resources they had come to claim. And a few, silent but uneasy, whispered a darker fear, that perhaps Earth was unlike any world they had conquered before. On the ground, among the survivors, the turning point was clear. For the first time, children whispered about victory instead of defeat. Fighters looked to the sky not only in fear, but in hope. Humanity had bent under the storm, but had not broken. Instead, they were changing. The invaders had come to crush primitives. But what they had found was something they had never prepared for. A species that grew stronger in the face of death, that learned faster than any enemy, and that carried a fire no weapon could extinguish. The galaxy had seen the fall of cities. Now it was about to see the rise of Earth. The world had bled, the cities had fallen, and the invaders believed Earth would finally break. But instead of silence, the planet answered with thunder. Humanity had reached the point where survival was no longer enough. It was time to fight back. In hidden bunkers, leaders of shattered nations met in secret. They were not generals of one country anymore. They were commanders of Earth. Around old wooden tables lit by flickering lamps, they spoke in many languages but with one voice. The resistance was no longer scattered bands of survivors. It was becoming an army. The first strike of this new army came in the deserts of North Africa. Alien machines had built a great outpost there, a stronghold from which they controlled half the continent. Towers of black steel rose from the sand, pulsing with alien energy. To the fleet, it was unbreakable. But to humans, it was a target. For weeks, fighters gathered. From villages, from ruins, from deep caves, they came carrying whatever weapons they had. Some carried rifles, others carried stolen alien cannons mounted on jeeps. Engineers rigged explosives made from captured power cells. Pilots prepared their few remaining jets, repaired with scraps and parts stolen from wreckage. And above them, a single stolen scout ship circled like a hawk, its human crew ready to strike. The battle began at dawn. Human fighters stormed across the desert in waves, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust. Alien towers opened fire, beams of light scorching the sand. Dozens fell, but the survivors pressed forward, hiding behind smoke and dust storms whipped up by the desert winds. Hidden railguns roared from the cliffs, tearing holes in the walls of the outpost. And then, the stolen ship dived from the sky, blasting the towers with their own stolen weapons. The desert shook with fire and screams, human and alien alike. The invaders sent walkers into the sand, tall machines stomping forward with cannons glowing. But the humans had prepared. Mines buried deep exploded beneath their feet. Hunters ran through the dust, carrying explosives on their backs, leaping onto machines to plant them where armor was weakest. The sky turned red with fire, and by nightfall, the outpost that had stood like a fortress lay in ruins. For the first time in the war, an entire alien stronghold had fallen. The humans did not only take victory, they took supplies, weapons, and machines. Engineers swarmed over the wreckage, pulling it apart, learning, rebuilding. The outpost's destruction became a symbol across the world. Humanity was not only surviving anymore, they were pushing the enemy back. From that day, battles broke out everywhere. In the frozen north, submarines struck alien ships from beneath the ice. In the jungles, resistance fighters used hacked drones to lead patrols into ambushes. In the ruins of old cities, underground railguns shot down alien gunships. Each victory was small, but together they were something greater. Proof that humans could fight as an army of Earth, not as broken survivors. The alien commanders grew furious. Their war machines had never been tested like this. Primitive species were supposed to collapse, not rise. They sent more ships, more troops, more fire. But the harder they pressed, the more Earth resisted. The galaxy had never known a world that fought like this. And then, humanity showed something the invaders could not understand: sacrifice. At the second battle for the African desert, a small unit of fighters carried captured power cells into the heart of an alien tower. They knew they would not return. But when the cells detonated, the blast tore through the tower and destroyed half the alien garrison. The names of those fighters spread across the planet like a song, and their courage became a weapon stronger than any bomb. For the first time, humans began to talk not only about survival, but about victory. Children in refugee camps drew pictures of alien ships falling from the sky. Soldiers carved the names of fallen friends into their rifles, swearing they would see the war to its end. And in the hidden command centers, leaders dared to whisper a word they had not spoken since the invasion began. Hope. Above Earth, the alien fleet shifted uneasily. They still held the skies, they still had numbers, but they had lost the one thing that gave them certainty: fear. Humanity was no longer afraid. And a species that no longer fears is the most dangerous enemy of all. By the end of the 6th month of war, Earth was unrecognizable. The great cities were gone, but the world was alive with fire and resistance. From deserts to oceans, from mountains to jungles, humanity was fighting back. Primitive no longer. They were becoming something else, something the galaxy would never forget. The war for survival had become a war for Earth, and humanity was ready to take it beyond their world. The desert victory had changed everything. For the first time, the aliens had lost not only soldiers, but control. Earth was no longer a battlefield of desperate survivors. It was a planet rising in defiance. Yet to win, humanity knew they could not fight only on the ground. The fleet above the clouds still owned the skies. If humans were to survive, they had to go higher. They had to take the war into space. It began with stolen ships. The scout craft captured in South America had been only the first. By now, resistance fighters had managed to seize several more, some damaged, some nearly destroyed. Mechanics worked day and night, welding human steel to alien frames, attaching old engines to alien cores, and fitting rifles where cannons once stood. They were not perfect. They were clumsy, unstable, and dangerous even to their pilots. But they could fly. And flying was enough. The first mission was launched from a mountain base hidden in the Himalayas. A handful of stolen craft rose into the sky, carrying human pilots who had never dreamed of touching the stars. Their hearts pounded as the blue faded into black and Earth curved below them. Ahead, the fleet loomed like dark mountains in orbit. The aliens detected them quickly, sending drones to intercept. The battle that followed was chaos. Human pilots flew wildly, spinning and diving, using instincts rather than training. Alien drones fired beams of energy that scorched the black sky, but humans refused to fly like machines. They darted, they rolled, they used unpredictability as their shield. And when their weapons failed, some rammed their ships directly into the drones, turning themselves into living missiles. By the end of that battle, half the human ships were gone, but so were dozens of alien drones. The world below erupted in cheers. For the first time, humanity had fought in space and lived. The galaxy had seen primitives rise from mud and stone, but now those same primitives had reached for the stars with stolen wings. The message was clear. Earth would not remain grounded. More missions followed. From underground hangars and hidden valleys, more hybrid ships took flight. Each time, more alien drones fell. Each time, more humans returned with knowledge, with data, with stolen parts. Every victory taught them something new. Every failure made them stronger. Slowly, painfully, humanity was learning to fight a war no one believed they could. And then came the raid. Intelligence gathered from hacked alien signals revealed the location of a supply station orbiting Earth's moon. It was a massive platform, feeding power and weapons to the fleet above. If humanity could destroy it, the fleet would weaken. If they failed, the cost would be beyond measure. Hundreds volunteered for the mission, but only a few ships could fly. At night, under the cover of silence, the human fleet, small, fragile, but determined, rose into the black sky. They flew past clouds, past the edge of Earth's breath, until the stars opened wide around them. Ahead, the supply station glowed like a beast with many eyes. The battle was brutal. Alien defenses lit the void with beams of fire. Human ships burst apart like sparks, but the survivors pressed on. Fighters dove into enemy lines, carrying stolen power cells as bombs. Explosions rocked the station, tearing its shields apart. And then, with one final charge, a ship overloaded its core inside the station's heart. The blast lit the darkness, brighter than the moon itself. When the fire cleared, the station was gone. Its wreckage spun in silence, floating like broken teeth around the moon. Humanity had done the impossible. They had struck a blow not on Earth, but beyond it. The invaders could not ignore this. Panic spread among their commanders. Never before had a primitive world risen so far, so fast. Never before had they faced an enemy that turned weakness into strength with such speed. The galaxy had crushed 100 species before, yet Earth was breaking every rule. On the ground, humanity watched the sky differently now. No longer with fear, but with fire in their hearts. Children pointed at the stars and said, "Our people are up there." Soldiers looked to the heavens and whispered, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And in the hidden command rooms, human leaders spoke the words they had long avoided. The war was no longer just for survival. It was no longer just for Earth. It was for the future. If they could take the fight into space, if they could stand against the fleet, then maybe, just maybe, they could take the war to the stars themselves. The galaxy had come to conquer Earth, but Earth was preparing to conquer the galaxy. The moon burned with wreckage. Alien ships drifted like broken bones, their flames glowing against the black sky. Humanity had done what no other species had ever dared. They had struck the conquerors in space. But victory came with a cost. Half of the stolen ships were gone, their pilots never returning to Earth. Families mourned. Yet in every tear there was pride. The galaxy now knew Earth would never kneel. The alien fleet reeled from the loss. Commanders shouted, ships repositioned, and orders flooded their network. What was meant to be a quick conquest had turned into a long war that drained their strength. They had never planned for this. No world had ever resisted so hard, for so long. But Earth was different. Every strike only gave humans more determination. Every defeat only taught them faster. And now the aliens had to decide, continue a war that was bleeding them dry, or end it with one final act. The answer came soon. In orbit, their flagship, a colossal ship the size of a city, moved into position above Earth. Its core weapon charged, glowing brighter than the sun. It was not meant for battle, but for annihilation. One shot would end the war by ending the planet itself. On Earth, leaders and soldiers watched in silence. The sky glowed red with the light of the weapon charging. If it fired, there would be no survivors. Earth's story would end in fire, but humanity was not ready to die. Deep in a hidden base, engineers had been preparing one last gamble. From the wreckage of alien machines and the sacrifice of stolen cores, they had built a weapon unfinished, unstable, but powerful enough to strike at the flagship. It was loaded onto the single remaining hybrid ship large enough to carry it. The mission was simple, yet impossible. Fly into the heart of the enemy fleet and destroy their leader. The pilot who stepped forward was not a general, not a hero known across the world. He was a soldier who had fought in the first days, who had seen his home destroyed and his family lost. He said nothing as he climbed into the cockpit. His silence was his promise. He was not flying to survive, he was flying to end the war. The ship launched into the night. From the ground, humanity watched as a single light rose into the black sky, dwarfed by the fleet waiting above. Alien drones swarmed to intercept, filling the void with beams of energy. The pilot wove between them, his stolen ship shuddering with each strike. Alarms screamed, sparks burst from the panels, but still he flew higher, faster, straight into the fire. The human resistance on the ground did not stay silent. Across continents, fighters rose, striking at alien forces to draw their attention. In the skies, every remaining stolen craft lifted off to join the mission, even if only to die buying seconds. Humanity fought with everything they had, as if the entire species shared one heartbeat. One will. The pilot broke through the last wave of drones. Ahead, the flagship loomed, its weapon glowing brighter, seconds away from firing. The pilot armed the weapon in his hold. The unstable core of stolen alien power cells fused together into one impossible bomb. His voice cracked through the radio, not to the enemy, but to Earth below, for us all. Then he dove. The ship streaked into the belly of the flagship, fire trailing in the void. A heartbeat later, the stars lit with an explosion greater than anything Earth had ever seen. The flagship erupted in flames, its weapon dying before it could fire. The shockwave tore through the alien fleet, sending ships spinning, breaking their formation. One by one, the invaders pulled back, fleeing into the void. The galaxy's conquerors, who had never known fear, had been broken. On Earth, people fell to their knees, not in despair, but in awe. The sky cleared. The enemy was gone. Humanity had not only survived, they had won. The cost was carved deep. Cities were gone, families shattered, entire nations left in ruins. But in those ruins, something new was born. For the first time in history, humanity was not divided by borders. They had fought as one, bled as one, and won as one. Primitive no longer, they had shown the stars that Earth was a world of fire, of will, of defiance. And somewhere beyond the stars, alien survivors carried tales of the humans, the primitives who had turned death into victory. They whispered of Earth not as prey, but as a warning. A species that could not be broken, a people who rose stronger from every wound. The galaxy had come to conquer Earth, But Earth had answered with a promise. Humanity was ready for the stars.